Hey everybody, my name is Caleb Pittman. Thank you for joining today's live stream for our Expect Excellence class. We're excited to be able to offer this to both our people in person as well as online. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a review of what we discussed last week. Last week, some of the things I discussed was the idea of how music works, and that's just generally the whole concept of music theory is just the who, what, when, where, why of music. But we also just kind of went into how music is both a very left brain side and a right brain. So music theory is all that left brain side of of your brain, just how the technical side of it works, how we put all those things together, and understanding all this helps our right brain, our creative side, kind of make sense of everything to make it something really, really special. So some of the things that we discussed last week is we got into some basic notation. So we have our quarter note, half note, dotted half note, and whole note. And again, just the way that notes work and their sole purpose is how long to play for. And that is the only thing that they serve. Now, what we have over here is we have our grand staff. So our grand staff tells us what note to specifically play. So depending upon what note is placed where, that will indicate what note we're going to play and for how long. So for example, if I drew a quarter note right here, so quarter note on this space is a C. Now, it's not just a C, this is a specific one. It's called C5. So best way to kind of explain that is with a piano, and we move up in octaves. And so if I were to play the very first C, so we hear that's really low, right? So that's the first C that is possible to play on a piano, and that is called C1. So, and if I worked up to the next one, that's C2, C3, C4 or middle C, and C5. So you may have noticed that they all sounded the same except for their pitch. Some of them sound lower, some of them sound higher. And so that is the kind of the whole concept. Our musical alphabet is very small. So we go A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and then we start over again. And so our pitches are going to continue to reoccur. It's just they're going to continue to get higher and higher or lower and lower in pitch. Okay. So again, where it's placed on the staff is that we don't get to just play whatever C we want. Our music is telling us it's wanting to play this specific one. It's wanting that particular sound. Okay? And again, that is the entire idea behind our staff. Now, as we talked about last week, our staff is really infinite. So what we see on here, this is where a lot of the majority of our notes lie on this staff. However, it would be really difficult to read a full-sized board here and even larger than that of notes. So it's really too much to write and it's hard to read. And so they confine it here to the grand staff, and particular instruments will read off of a grand staff. Some instruments have a smaller range and they'll only read off of one staff. So for instance, my higher instruments like a clarinet, a piccolo, flute, things like that are going to read off of the treble clef. Those are higher pitched instruments. And then on my bass clef, my instruments like a trombone, a baritone, tuba, bass, things like that, they're going to read down here off of the bass clef. It's just where their pocket of their range allows that instrument to play. And then, of course, you got a piano. A piano has a whole bunch of keys on it. A full-size piano has 88 keys. So it can read and use both because it has a much wider range. Okay. But again, we have this kind of smaller just more confined space. It just allows us to make it a lot easier to read. Okay? So again, notes, sole job, tell you how long to play for. Our staff, where it's placed, is telling you what specific note to play. And we also talked about last week, we had a couple phrases that help us remember what notes belong where. So we have our lines and we have our spaces. So at the treble clef, our spaces going from bottom to top spell face. So F-A-C-E. Okay? And then our lines is every good boy does fine. Okay? E, G, B, D, F. Okay? Now if we move down to the bass clef, we have our spaces, all cows eat grass. Okay? A, C, E, G. And then our lines make good boys do fine always. G, B, D, F, A. Okay? Now, let's show you something interesting, is that it all moves in alphabetical order according to our musical alphabet. So let's just start at the bottom here. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Well, we're just going to start back over again. Okay? So if we started here, G, so our next in the sequence would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay, so it works up alphabetically. Now it even keeps going. Now remember, this is just like one big infinite kind of chart here, the way the staff works. So when we get up to A on this top line, so this space right above it would be B. And then right here in the middle of our staffs, we have middle C. And so we have B, C, and then right above that, the space above this line or below this line would be D. It keeps going. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. I can keep going. G on this space. I'm going to draw another line. Now we have A. The space above that is B. And I could just keep on going up or down. But this whole thing is connected with our notes. All right? So understanding these things is that when you're looking at a piece of music, it can be very intimidating. But taking all these concepts and we're going to be simplifying, of course, everything. So you're able to look at all the details that a composer is trying to give you. So that way you know what's going on. Music, again, is a language. So we have to learn how to speak it. Okay? So we have our notation up here. We're going to go into a few more notes that are pretty common that we would see. These notes are played a little bit quicker than any of these. Okay, so we have these notes here. They're called eighth notes. So eighth notes are worth less than a beat. Okay, so just for a quick review, again, we use a term called beats instead of seconds when we talk about the duration of our notes. So for a quarter note, so if I was playing a sequence of quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's hits on every single beat. Now again, we use the term beats instead of seconds because beats can change time. Seconds cannot. Seconds are bound to a specific set of time. Beats can fluctuate. We can go very slow. I can go really fast. Okay? So it is very dependent upon the piece. Sometimes a quick piece is going to move very quickly. So that is why we use the terms beats instead of seconds. Now, let's move on to a half note. Okay? So a half note, we're going to hold it for 2 beats. Okay, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2. All right. Now, dotted half note is worth 3 beats, so I'm going to hold 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Lastly, we have our whole note. It's worth 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 for our basic notation. Now, over here, I said for our eighth note, it's worth less than a beat. So, what does that mean? So, that means that I could fit 2 eighth notes where 1 beat would lie. Okay, so let's say I was playing some quarter notes. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I were to play eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so see how I was able to strum twice within each beat. Okay, and that's how eighth notes work. All right. So eighth notes are just played a little bit quicker. Now, there's 2 ways. There's a couple different ways you can actually write eighth notes. So a single eighth note looks like this. So it's very similar to a quarter note, except it has a little flag on the end of it. Now, those are 2 eighth notes that just follow each other. So in music, what they have done with notes that are worth less than a beat, and so there is some that are faster than an eighth note. There's 16th notes, there's 32nd notes, there's 64th notes. They keep getting faster. Well, they add these bars on the top it's basically just a visual to help you know, hey, you have these eighth notes coming up and they're going to follow each other. So it's just for reading purposes, just kind of visually help see. I got a lot of notes that are going to be quick in a sequence. Okay. So, I mean, I could have 3 notes. I could have 4 eighth notes. So those are all eighth notes, what I just put up there. It's just if they're following each other, we'll start connecting them in blocks. And it's just, again, it's just to kind of help see it and read it a little bit easier in the context of a piece of music. All right. So we have our basic notation. I also want to show you that there is periods where we don't play called rests. So I'm going to draw a couple rests here for you. All right, so here is some of our basic rests. We have a quarter rest, half rest, a whole rest, and an eighth rest. So again, a rest is a period where we do not play. There's plenty of times where you will stop and take a break. You see that a lot of pieces of music is every singer, every instrumentalist doesn't play the entire time. Sometimes they stop and they get those periods of rest so they can let other moments be highlighted. So if you had like a big brass section that was really big, really loud, and it got to a really delicate piece, sometimes they'll cut out the brass instruments and just kind of focus on the woodwinds. They're very light and just kind of really clean, very, very pretty. So sometimes it wants to focus on something like that. So it's just ways to make it musical. So for instance, here, if I had, let's say I had quarter notes, then a quarter rest, quarter note, quarter rest. This would be a sound like. So 1 rest, 1 rest, 1 rest, 1 rest. So all these are the same duration. It's worth 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, and half of a beat. Okay. So these are pretty common in music. Now, you also might kind of be wondering, well, is there not a dotted half rest? There's actually not. Generally, if you would see that in a piece of music, if it wanted you to wait 3, you would just see a half rest and a quarter rest. So that would be normally what you'd see if it wanted you to wait for 3 beats. Okay? So again here, notes, how long to play for, where it's placed on the staff, what specific note to play. We also have periods of rest where it wants you to kind of take a step back. It doesn't want you to play here. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at some dynamic markings. So dynamics are what allows us to be able to really make a piece truly musical. So this is kind of the difference between a good public speaker versus a bad public speaker. You know, a very bad public speaker might be speaking very monotone. It's very boring. It's not enjoyable to listen to. But then you get a really good public speaker and they're very engaging. They draw you in. They're exciting with the way they speak. They use a lot of great inflections with their voice, and it's more enjoyable to listen to, even if it is on a subject matter that you don't really care too much about. A really good public speaker can make something that's not really enjoyable enjoyable. So that's a big part, you know, of our job as musicians. We have very similar concept, and that's through dynamics. And what we say in music is, hey, don't forget to make it musical. So so let's kind of show you some of these concepts. So with dynamics, it's allowing us to make inflections. So sometimes in a piece of music, you're going to see something like this. A P and kind of a fancy looking F, okay? So P on a piece of sheet music stands for piano, which means to play soft. And then our F stands for forte, which stands for loud, okay? So when you see these in a piece of music, it's wanting you to pull back or give more. And these are really, really important. This is the big thing about understanding music theory, again, is that a composer, when he's writing a piece of music, he has all of these little nuances in mind of like, I want it to be quiet here. I want it to be really passionate here. I want it to be really intense at this point. Is that he is telling a story through music. And so our job as musicians is that we need to tell that story to the best of our abilities. And so really paying close attention to these. Now, it's not just piano and forte. We have a whole lot more. So I'm going to write these out really quick. Kind of show you the range that you can have. So you see, we have a whole lot more than just play soft or loud. Okay. So again, so we have piano for P, and forgot one. Then we have F for forte. So let's take a look at the two that are in the middle. So this is with an MP and MF. So that stands for mezzo piano or mezzo forte. So it basically just means medium soft or medium loud. So that's your mezzo piano and mezzo forte. Then let's go behind piano here. So with 2 P's, a fancy little word, it's called pianissimo, which means even softer. And then this one is pianissimo. So try to say that 3 times fast. So pianissimo is even quieter. On the other side of that, very similar, you have forte, loud, fortissimo, it's even louder, and fortissimo is obnoxiously loud. Okay, so the mark of a really good musician is being able to have control over this entire range. What's very easy for musicians to do by mistake is sometimes get, let's say if a piece of music wanted to go from pianissimo all the way to fortissimo, the tendency sometimes is they get loud too quickly, or they get too quiet too quickly. So this is a really good testament of a really good musician, is being able to really have really precise control over their instrument or their voice to be able to really land in each one of these spots. So that's something to really work on, is if you have an instrument at home, just vocals, is try practicing sustaining a note at your quietest point and be able to really build up and clearly get from quietest, quiet, soft, medium loud, louder, loudest. So discovering that whole range that you have. So let's look at a couple others. Now, you've probably seen these before in math. It's got like the greater than, less than. These are a little bit different. So this one here is called a crescendo. And the one under it is diminuendo, or some people say decrescendo. So crescendo and diminuendo. Now, what these serve is it's telling you, it wants you to gradually get louder or gradually get softer over a period of time. Now, a crescendo can last just a couple notes. It can last like one measure. It can last over several pieces of measures, or and vice versa, same way with diminuendo, is that these are not subject to a particular amount of time. It can be as long or as short as needed. So if I was playing a piece of music and it was piano, and I'm just going to keep playing that piece softly until specified otherwise. If all of a sudden forte showed up, I immediately get loud. So I'm starting out quiet, and then I immediately get really loud, and I stay loud until it tells me to. Now, when we get down to crescendo and diminuendo, it's wanting you to gradually grow from whatever you're at. So if I was at piano, and it's, let's say for the next two measures, it wanted me to gradually grow and get to forte over the span of those couple of measures. Okay. Same way again with diminuendo, to gradually get softer over a period of time. Okay. So again, this is why I go back to this section here of the true testament of a really good musician, having really good control over the spectrum. You're not always going to just jump from one volume to another. There's many times where it's going to want you to gradually get there. And when you have to gradually get soft to loud over a long period of time, that's where, again, sometimes you can get too loud too quick or too soft too quickly, and then you're stuck halfway through playing at the wrong dynamic. So these are just some things, again, it's making everything very musical. Now, with this too, there is also another symbol that looks just like this. However, it's a small version. So if you saw this, again, it's the same shape, but it was over a note, that is something different. So a crescendo or diminuendo is going to be under a series of measures. I'm going to draw this in here. Draw in a few notes. Okay, so I draw a crescendo underneath these section of measures. Okay, so that's how you would generally see a crescendo or diminuendo placed, is in this position. Now, again, here, see this little accent mark here that is over a note, or it could be under a note like that. So this is an accent mark. So it's wanting you to play that particular note louder. Okay. So give another example of this. Let's say, for example, let's get rid of this crescendo. Let's say these three measures here, it was wanting you to play piano. So it was wanting you to play it softly. However, this note right here, it wanted it to be loud. So da, 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 da. So it's very specific on particular notes. So again, same kind of shape, it is smaller, but don't let that confuse you. Remember, these are intended to be under a series of notes, a series of measures like this. This little accent mark is going to be either under, or over a particular note. Okay? I'm going to show you guys one more thing. I talked a little bit about this last week. These markings here. So those markings mean staccato. Okay. So the staccato marking is letting us know to play our notes short and disconnected. Okay. So, for example, if I was playing just some regular quarter notes, well, now I'm going to make them staccato. Again, short and disconnected. So again, the timing didn't change as far as how fast I was playing that, but the notes were shorter. So my beats were still this long. It's just the first time all those notes were connected. The second time, short and separated. Now, I talked about last week is see how this dot is out to the side of the note. That is very important. Again, so sometimes when you see a dot, it can mean multiple things, but where it's placed is what really lets us know what we are going to do. So we have a dot out to the side of a note. It is increasing its value. Okay, so that's why we have here dotted half note is out to the side, and it has made this worth 3 now. Okay. Now, when I have a dot that is under or over a note, depending upon which way the stem is pointing, is that it's telling you to play it staccato. It's very short and disconnected. So those are little things in music theory. Sometimes it can be a little confusing, is that sometimes we have similar symbols for things, but how they're placed will mean something differently. And it's not very often that we have a whole bunch of the same symbols, but this is a good example of similar ones. So like that accent mark, similarly, same kind of shape. It's very small, but it was over or under a note specifically. Crescendo and decrescendo is over a period, over a section of notes. When you grow all of these notes from this dynamic to this dynamic. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you guys learned something. So again, as we're going through these music theory basics, feel free to comment down below, be able to ask some questions, and we're just going to continue to take some baby steps into recognizing all of these symbols. Like, what does it all mean? And so the more that we continue to get used to this and understand how all of these elements work together, then we can better understand how to read music, what the composer is wanting us to do, so we can really make it musical and we can put on the best version of this performance. So thank you so much. Have a great day.